Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we have Death and Taxes versus Elves. I feel like this is one of the more lopsided matchups in the format. We'll see what Tyler can do about this. There's a handful of comical matchups in my estimation, and Elves versus Death and Taxes is one of the worst. I think Reanimator versus Death and Taxes is another one that feels pretty bad. Death and Taxes is actually the winner in that matchup. It's probably 4 or 5 to 1 in terms of probably like an 80% win percentage. Death and Taxes versus Reanimator, depending on the builds. But yeah, Elves, while I don't have any data off the top of my head, it does feel like one of the absolute worst matchups in the format. But it is Legacy. Anything can happen. Even an incredibly lopsided match is going to be 80-20, meaning that the underdog can in fact pull through. So we'll just have to see. Nettle Sentinel. Elves off to a fairly terrible start as far as Elves decks go. Expect this Wooded Foothills to fetch a Dryad Arbor. Dryad Arbor. Probably the most fetched land in the deck. Of course, you're also grabbing the card with Green Sun Zenith on turn 1 most of the time. You really want to go into turn 2 with 3 mana, either a Mana Dork or a Zenith for Dryad Arbor. Just something that really lets you potentially play out your threats in a accelerated fashion. Having to wait a full turn is very often the difference between winning and losing. Elves is a combo deck. The backup plan of Beatdown is not really what you want to steer into. Craterhoof is a fast way to win a game of Legacy when it's backed up by a bunch of Mana Dorks. Umezawa's Jite. This card can do a lot of work versus Elves. But Elves does have answers to it, so historically what you're going to want to look for here is going to be a Wirewood Symbiote or a Quirion Ranger. Either of those can potentially make it very difficult to get through, though this Mother of Runes greatly complicates that situation. Now we have a Glimpse of Nature and Spirit of the Labyrinth. That is just straight up rude. Allosaurus Shepherd comes down, does not draw a card, and will this main deck inclusion be enough to really swing this situation? Looks like a Gaia's Cradle, perhaps. Can't quite tell with the glare. Though those are, if that's the case, I would expect Peter to have another one in hand. You generally don't want to throw a Cradle out there and not use it the turn it comes out. It is now going to be susceptible to port. And this is actually spiraling horribly out of control as we see Mother of Runes giving protection from green and allowing this Spirit of the Labyrinth to connect. Umezawa's Jite can start taking out Elves. And this first game has gone horribly wrong for Elves. Right from the get-go, though, this was not the strongest of hands. And Death and Taxes putting a legitimate clock on the situation. As Spirit of the Labyrinth and now Stoneforge Mystic as well are able to turn sideways. This Nettle Sentinel locked down by the fact that he doesn't untap. And we see, I believe, a Flagstones of Troikar. But it's an interesting inclusion in the deck. Does help out versus Smallpox and similar cards. Quirion Ranger gets to untap the Nettle Sentinel, but this is not really... I'm going to go ahead and give Tyler the check mark. I expect Peter to be scooping relatively soon. There it is. And Tyler doesn't even need to give Pro Green at this point. He can just turn it sideways. If you try and block, happily pump the Spirit. And Rashad Ports just tapping down all of Peter's mana. And now he scoops. Yeah, I mean, that's just an absolute mauling there. We'll see if Peter can have one of those combo hands. That's really what Elves wants, is the ability to combo off. And Death and Taxes just doesn't often have much to say about it. Casting a Natural Order for 5 mana instead of 4 mana, really not that large of a burden to impose on the Elves player. Just that extra 1 mana for Thalia just really isn't that big a deal. Now, Sanctum Prelate can come down and potentially stop Natural Order. As we saw, Spirit of the Labyrinth can stop Glimpse of Nature. But you still have Allosaurus Shepherd as a new inclusion, and that could just turn everything into 5/5s, potentially just fueled off of a bunch of bodies and a Gaia's Cradle. So we'll see. I may have jinxed this for Peter, talking about just how good a matchup he finds himself in. Looks like Tyler's good there. And a Savannah into Elvish Reclaimer. Card that we don't usually see in Elves. It can grab Gaia's Cradle. Potentially give you access to some utility lands post-board. I feel like I would much rather see a Llanowar, Finhorn, Elvish Mystic, any mana dork on the first turn, but we'll see how this plays out. I feel like the acceleration over those couple of turns would be significantly higher than paying 3 mana in total to go get a Gaia's Cradle and sacking a land. That Savannah perhaps indicating that there is a Archon of Valor's Reach somewhere in the 75. The white mana allowing you to hardcast the disruptive Natural Order target. Typically when you cast Natural Order, you just want to win the game. However, there are some matchups where you're very happy to be able to get out an Archon of Valor's Reach and just not die on your opponent's turn. Oh man, I missed what that was. We got some serious glare. Everything tapping indicates that that would be a Heritage Druid. Everything just tapped for mana. X equals 2. In a Elvish Visionary, going to be able to draw a card. Llanowar Visionary, the new printing, sees some play in Pauper. Not quite good enough for Legacy. 2 mana. It's about as much as you want to spend for that effect. But it is an incredibly welcome one, especially when paired with Wirewood Symbiote. Oh, and now Phyrexian Revoker. That is going to stop the Heritage Druid in all likelihood. Birchlore Ranger can still enable some acceleration, and that Elvish Reclaimer can still tutor up a Cradle at any point. Karaka's on the other side of the board. Just one of the disruptive / useful cards that Death and Taxes gets to run, given that it's mono white. I'm like trying to move as if the glare will matter on the screen if I move my head, just in reflex. Let's see here. That looks like a Mirren Crusader, perhaps? And now Quirin Ranger. And that is a bit of a problem. Dryad Arbor can block and then be returned to hand, kind of creating quite a lot of confusion during the combat step. Really muddies the waters in terms of how you can proceed. And Mirren Crusader, on the other hand, this pro-green and pro-black, I believe. So that is going to punch through for 4 damage. As long as there's no equipment, he's not that bad. And now Containment Priest. That's a strong card, but right now it's in Tyler's hand. Mother of Runes joins his team. And Peter fetching. Likely going to grab a Dryad Arbor. Indeed. And now finally using this Elvish Reclaimer to go get a Gaia's Cradle. And it looks like Tyler may be losing this game with the answer in hand. Containment Priest not able to get onto the board. If Peter can resolve a Natural Order or a massive Green Sun Zenith, either one of those will do it, and it is the Zenith, as this allows for a Crater Hoof and just dozens and dozens of extra damage. And like that, we are on to game number 3. Does remind me of internet forum squabbles back in the day. I recall somebody trying to write a primer on elves and claiming that it can do infinite damage. It was not impressive. Elves, the particular build they were talking about, can do lots of damage. It's just not infinite. Infinite does, in fact, mean unbounded. You can do as much damage as needed. If your opponent gained a trillion life, then you could easily do more than that with infinite. However, Crater Hoof does cap out probably in the, what would it be? These particular builds? Hundreds? Yeah, I doubt it even does thousands of damage. If it's, I mean, maybe it's more than 1,000, I doubt it. My gut tells me it's probably like 400 or 500. You can let me know if I'm wrong on that. But Crater Hoof. Yeah, if it's like 30 creatures in the deck, be 30 times 30 is like 900. Okay. And you got 2 Crater Hoofs. Yeah, so a couple grand. Thousands of damage, let's say. Nettle Sentinel here. Again, not a stellar start. Death and Taxes on the other side. Does have Aether Vial, along with Rishadenport, so kind of doing exactly what Death and Taxes wants to do. It's going to be able to tax Peter's mana base and continue the acceleration of its own plan by ticking up the vial each turn, having quality drops at 2 and 3. Containment Priest, not a great friend of Aether Vial. One of the rare sideboard cards that can be played against a variety of combo decks, but also against Death and Taxes. But Peter's sideboard probably not going to have a ton of utility in this matchup. I mean, I'd imagine we're going to see this Wirewood Symbiote is getting hit with a Path to Exile. I'd imagine we'll see Abrupt Decay. Oh, what is Peter doing here? Path to Exile is resolving. He's got to go get a basic out of his deck. Oh, and he does not? Oh, I'm not sure about that. Well, let's take a look as he's going through this if we can see. Now he's doing it off camera. I can't imagine that there's only 2 forests in the deck. A Bayou is found. I mean, maybe that's the case. And a 1-mana Elf. Yeah, taking a quick look at Peter's list on MTG Top 8. MTG Top 8 does confirm that he only runs the 2 basic forests. That is a bit of a change. It looks like it's not a super uncommon change. In the past, Elf decks running 3, but apparently going with 8 fetches, 2 forests, 2 bayous, the 4 cradles, of course, and that Savannah, allowing for those sideboard options, or even that main deck Archon of Valor's Reach, if that's what you're into. Peter has a board presence, and he'll turn everything sideways. Mirren Crusader, and boy, does that practically end the game on the spot. This is going to devour whichever one of these. Oh, Abrupt Decay is not going to work out on this one for multiple reasons. I mean, we've got the Mother of Runes. We got the Mirren Crusader. I mean, it's pro-green already. So Aether Vial is taken down. Big oof there. If that Abrupt Decay is played pre-combat, that does force Tyler to tip his hand and put in that Mirren Crusader. So that one's got a sting. Peter actually won a Gaia's Cradle from our events, thanks to the donations from Fee. Fee actually helped get this whole tournament series started with incredible generosity, donating dual lands and Gaia's Cradle and all sorts of amazing cards that really helped form this community, which will continue throughout at least all of 2021. So if you're thinking about playing, every Wednesday and Friday we are playing live over Discord all year long, no matter how this shakes out. And we've got a Allosaurus Shepherd here for Peter. Boy, this talking about how bad a matchup this is, despite Tyler having a Mirren Crusader and a Mother of Runes. If Peter just like draws a Gaia's Cradle, this could be absolutely graphic. He might be able to just use the Allosaurus Shepherd to grow his whole team, turn everything fearlessly sideways, and just get Tyler out of there in a course of a couple of turns. 7 damage coming in. Ether Sworn Canonist. Allosaurus Shepherd, Nettle Sentinel, Quirin Ranger. I believe 2 Quirin Rangers. Quirin Ranger can help by allowing a forest to return to hand and then be replayed. But oh, Peter has better than that. He does have the Cradle. So it's a question of whether or not he's dead on the crackback, which I don't think he is. Let's see how this plays out. He can make everything 5/5s. Everything is getting in there. Tyler's got the options of what to block. He can soak up 10 of this damage. Everything's going to become a 5/5. We're going to have to infer exactly how this all gets sorted based off of what goes to the graveyard. Oh, and is that actually pushed through enough damage on its own? I thought it was going to take multiple turns. Wow, so I guess the previous damage actually allowing Peter to get there, that is surprising. I'm going to actually pause and review the footage real quick. I don't usually do that, just to make sure that I credit the winner correctly. But, so yeah, based off of reviewing the footage there, it looks like Tyler is probably at about 13 life. And if he took a hit from 3 of those creatures, that actually would have done it. So I'm going to assume that that's the case. If Peter or Tyler see this, go ahead and comment. We'll pin that to the top. But yeah, and also based off of Tyler going over his sideboard, that usually happens from the other side of the table. If you win the match, you don't usually go through and show all of the cards from your sideboard. That's my guess. Let me know what you think in the comments. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.